What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey Malari. So today's a big day in the NFL. I already broke down some of the players that were released. I talked about the franchise tag and previewed what the Giants are going to do with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. Right up until the buzzer here today at 4 p.m. was the deadline for the franchise tag. The Giants got a deal done within the last 5 minutes of the deadline to get Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones under contract with the New York Giants. Saquon Barkley landing on the franchise tag after Daniel Jones received a 4-year, $160 million deal from the New York Giants. I have Paul from Southie here to give me his thoughts on the deal for both Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, and to talk about the Giants. How are we doing, Paul?
Good, Joe. How you doing tonight?
Doing well. Thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure having the sports encyclopedia on, the sports wizard, as they say. Thank you for coming on, Paul. Always a pleasure.
We're very excited in Giants Nation tonight as you broke the news. Daniel Jones is under contract for 4 years. You know, I've been on board since day one with him. They finally got him, an offense that has some weapons, gave him some time, has a great running back, and look what they did. They broke a 5 or 6 year skid of
no playoffs. 2016 was the last run the Giants had. They didn't even win a playoff game since the 2011 Super Bowl run where they won. It was a 2012 Super Bowl, but 2011 season was the last time the Giants won a playoff game before winning one this season.
It was a major turnaround in 1 year with the new regime, which Joe Schoen and
Brian Daboll.
So based on what I know Daniel Jones can do, he cut down on his turnovers. I don't think anybody, even Jalen Hurts, can run like him. Justin Fields can, he's got the wheels too, but it seems like they call a lot of plays for Daniel Jones on third downs, on any kind of bootlegs. He gets those yards. He's a very valuable runner. I think he can make any throw he needs to. He has the deep ball, he has the touch pass, and now he has weapons. I think it's just a huge upside for the Giants offense going forward.
Like you said, Daniel Jones does, throw the deep ball very well. He's actually number one in the NFL in passer rating on deep passes in the 2020 season. Hopefully the Giants get him a wide receiver in the offseason to help him get back to those ways. This past season, though, in 2022, he did use his legs a lot better. That's what Brian Daboll came over to do. Brian Daboll was obviously the offensive coordinator with the Bills for 4 years and Josh Allen. He knew how to help Josh Allen work on his accuracy on forcing less turnovers. Brings Daniel Jones a new insight on how to play more conservative, not fumble the ball, not throw interceptions, and use his running ability to his advantage. And that's what Daniel Jones did this past year. You work to your advantages, right? And that's what Brian Daboll did for Daniel Jones this past year. Help Daniel Jones go through his progressions better. That's what Daniel Jones did very well this year. Stay comfortable in the pocket. Daniel Jones was getting drilled some games this year, and he stayed comfortable in the pocket even in the biggest moments. Even in the biggest moments, Daniel Jones was calm, cool, and collected. That's what you want in a starting quarterback. That's what you want a franchise quarterback. And Daniel Jones' deal today proves he's the franchise quarterback for the New York Giants. 4 years, $160 million, $35 million that is possible in incentives. $82 million over the first 2 years. He's getting $94 million guaranteed at the signing. And his first-year cap number is around $19 million. That was broken down by Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network. Then Paul Schwartz of the New York Post said that Daniel Jones' 2023 salary cap hit should be around $18.5 million, meaning that Daniel Jones is leaving the Giants with a little bit more money to work for 2023 and figure out what they want to do this offseason. Daniel Jones could have gotten the franchise tag, which would have been $32.4 million. $32.4 million as a franchise tag cannot be restructured in any way. It's guaranteed for this year's cap hit, and that's what Saquon Barkley ends up getting, a $10.1 million cap hit that's guaranteed. You cannot restructure that. Daniel Jones saved the Giants money by saying, okay, I'll take a long-term deal. Daniel Jones, don't get me wrong, he did get his payday at the end of the day, so I'm not saying it's not like he didn't get himself good in a good position. He did get his payday, but he also said, I'll take a little less money this year, or we'll backload some of it, even front-load some of it as well. As I said, he's making $82 million in the first 2 years, but in the first year, his salary cap hit is only $18.5 million. That's to help the Giants have a little bit of flexibility to work with. So $18.5 million in a salary cap hit, then you add in Saquon Barkley's about $10.1 million. That's just about $20 million there in salaries between Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. Not too sure of everything else of the contract situation. I'm sure it's probably good. It'll probably be updated over the next day of whether or not his cap hits higher or lower than that 18.5. I'm sure it's probably around there, but we'll see. As I said, I'm not really too sure of all the answers there, but $18.5 million as a year one salary is pretty good for the Giants to help build around. I think the main thing they were trying to do was find a way to front load some of his contract so that if he were not to work out, 2 years from now, it's a little bit easy to get out. You see some quarterbacks where a lot of the deal is backloaded, like Carson Wentz, like Matt Ryan. it becomes harder to move those guys because they're backloaded deals. Ryan Tannehill last year, backloaded money. It's harder to move guys that have backloaded money.
I think it's very team friendly in both cases with DJ and with Saquon. I mean, it's going to leave them some cap money. I think they have 9 draft picks in this coming draft.
9 drafts, yep. 9
so
draft
they
picks.
could probably use that, go deep in rounds and find a couple of diamonds in the rough. Maybe sign, a free agent. I think DJ could use a big-time wide receiver. Now that Kenny Golladay is gone, he obviously didn't fulfill his contract. I think the Giants will be looking, for a game breaker. I mean, what Daniel Jones accomplished, I know people still like to point fingers at him, but we watched every game. I mean, his receivers who we really enjoyed watching. I mean, they're not household names. I mean, between James and Hodgins.
Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins, and Darius Slayton.
Bellinger was out with the eye injury for a while.
Bellinger, tight end. Yeah.
I mean, he's going to be a stud. I think one of the better tight ends in the league praised him. Was it Kelsey or somebody said that?
Travis Kelsey liked him. Talked about him in his podcast, the New Heights show with Jason Kelsey's brother, and then also Greg Olsen, former NFL tight end, pointed out.
That's right.
Daniel Bellinger's blocking ability.
Yeah, I think the Giants. I thought DJ was fine in the pocket. I mean, how many turnovers did he have this year?
He had 3 fumbles and then 5 interceptions, so 8 turnovers. I mean,
how many quarterbacks had less turnovers than him?
Not many.
Couldn't have been many. And I think he showed a lot of poise in the pocket. I disagree with people that say he doesn't go through his progressions well. I mean, I didn't see him forcing the ball, and if he did force the ball, I mean, the pressure was on him. I mean, Philadelphia almost broke the sack record this year, and a couple of those times they played him, I mean, he had no time. I mean, so I wouldn't be surprised if they look for another offensive lineman to kind of sew up that line a little bit stronger for him.
Definitely. I think Daniel Jones, he did so well with limiting turnovers, even with the pass rush that he was facing every single game. The Giants' offensive line still wasn't great this season. And one stat comes from Next Gen Stats. Daniel Jones displayed improvement under duress in 2022, completing 4.3% of his passes above the expected percentage when pressured.
Wow.
So plus 4.3% of his passes over expected when pressured were completed. That's third best in the NFL. So plus 4.3 under duress over his expectation of percentage of passes completed. And Jones has been pressured in 37.5% of his dropbacks since entering the league as a rookie in 2019. The only quarterback over 35% is Daniel Jones on pressured dropbacks over 35%. Daniel Jones, 37.5% he comes in at. Daniel Jones also best in the NFL in interception percentage this year, turning the ball over on an interception just 1.1% of his passes, which is best in the NFL, number one. Coming in with 15 passing touchdowns, 5 picks, a 92.5%, 92.5 passer rating, which if you look at some guys he was better than, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson. I mean, it's some big names. Obviously, Russell Wilson didn't have a great year, neither did Kyler Murray, but there's always some big names there. He had a better passer rating than.
I'm kind of surprised that the league and the fans especially aren't giving him the credit he's due and he's earned. I mean, he had a tremendous year. We saw him improve. I mean, we saw a very good rookie year. He seems to be getting so much better, cutting down the turnovers. Obviously, I've already stated how well a runner he is. I mean, he gets a weapon or two more and maybe another offensive lineman. I see the Giants right back in the playoffs again.
I agree with you there. He was 6th best in the NFL, tied for 5th, that is, actually, in completion percentage among quarterbacks this year in the NFL, tied for 5th with Jimmy Garoppolo. So pretty impressive. He improved upon his completion percentage. Obviously, he was better in the pocket going through progressions. He still got hit a ton this past year. It's one thing the Giants have to work on is finding protection for him in this draft. Probably interior offensive line is what they're going to go for, since you have Evan Neal at the left tackle bookend there, and then or Andrew Thomas at the left tackle, excuse me. You have Evan Neal at the right tackle. That should be a bookend tackles for the foreseeable future, but Evan Neal obviously didn't show great promise towards the end of last season. But he was a rookie. I still think there's obviously ways for him to obviously improve upon. Maybe not opening up as wide, and as a rookie tackle, that's tough to do. Evan Neal, who I'm talking about, he struggled with it, but also Andrew Thomas as well. Andrew Thomas is a rookie coming out of Georgia. He struggled opening up too wide. So we'll see what happens there for Daniel Jones and how his protection improves over the next year. But probably go with 2 interior offensive linemen in the draft, whether it's a center and a guard, and then also maybe free agency, and then add some wide receivers around him. Maybe Odell Beckham Jr. He's potentially going to sub the Giants during the season this past year, but he wasn't ready to play, and the Giants ended up saying, we'll wait till the offseason to renegotiate again. It seems like he could be a potential opportunity potential option for the Giants to join the Giants, another opportunity for Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones to get more help around them. They were to get Odell Beckham Jr. So we'll see what happens there with DJ. I know you're the biggest DJ fan I know, and you're actually the one that got me to be as big a fan I am today. It's because of you being a huge Daniel Jones fan. So I know me and you are both happy for him, and obviously he bet on himself, and it worked out for him. If you look at what he had to go through over the past 3 or 4 years and the criticism he had to go through under Joe Judge and Jason Garrett was offensive coordinator, and Freddie Kitchens was offensive coordinator, and Pat Sherm was his head coach. And it was just all over the place what Daniel Jones had to deal with, and he went through it, and he prevailed. Same thing with Saquon Barkley. They both prevailed under pressure, and DJ actually becomes the first quarterback of all time to have their fifth-year option declined and re-signed with that team.
That's an incredible, it's not a coincidence. I mean, the Giants knew that DJ could be their quarterback to lead them to a championship, and I'm also, I want to mention Saquon Barkley coming back. I think that's a good deal. I'm glad he's back. He's explosive. He could have been comeback player of the year. Every
He's
time
close
he
to
touches
it.
the ball, I mean,
Geno Smith won it, but he was close.
He could take it to the house. I mean, he's incredible quickness, incredible strength. He's even caught a few passes. I think his blocking improved a little too.
He did,
but
yeah.
He's an amazing weapon coming out of the backfield. If you give him any crack of daylight, I mean, he can take it to the house on any given carry.
Absolutely. And that's one thing with Saquon Barkley. The Giants are happy that they could actually bring him back on a 1-year, $10.1 million deal. Obviously, it's a franchise tag. Maybe they'll negotiate up till July 15th to figure out a long-term deal. But the Giants, going into today, their main priority was giving Daniel Jones a long-term contract so they had some flexibility to create some cap space, and they can maneuver whatever way they're going, left or right, to figure out a way to free up cap space for this offseason. Since this is a big offseason for the Giants, winning a playoff game last year, now you want to improve and keep building and obviously keep getting better. And Daniel Jones getting a long-term contract gives them some flexibility for the foreseeable future. And same with Saquon Barkley. The Giants obviously want to go into today signing Daniel Jones to a long-term deal and then franchise taking Saquon Barkley. It worked out for them. And it worked out for them.
Two huge pieces of their offense, going forward into next year. We already know we're in a tough division with the Eagles going to the Super Bowl, and everybody picks Dallas every year to have their breakout season. So the Giants will have their work cut out for them. But you have to love today with the signings.
And credit to Bobby Skinner of Talking Giants, a podcast with John Boy Media. He was the one that pointed out that Daniel Jones becomes the first quarterback ever to have their fifth-year option declined last year and then re-signed with that team. He becomes the first ever, and he also pointed out, this is Bobby Skinner, that the new regime planned to let him walk and took a team that was destined for 5 wins, maybe 6, everyone's projecting. Daniel Jones took that team, elevated all of those around him, obviously with better coaching as well, it's a big part of it, to get a playoff win, and then also got himself some money. The Giants, Joe Schoen, the new front office, they came in with the expectation that Daniel Jones probably wasn't going to be back as their quarterback next year when they first originally came in. When you decline the fifth-year option, which would have been around, I think, $23 million, $24 million, somewhere around there. Maybe I could be wrong with that, mid-20s, either way. You decline that option, you run the risk of Daniel Jones having a great year and then walking in free agency.
I think we should also mention how well they played in the fourth quarter. I mean, Saquon Barkley seemed to get stronger as the game went on, and Daniel Jones seemed to deliver in the clutch game after game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing they did well. Daniel Jones actually had 5 game-winning drives this past season, which is very impressive. That actually ended up being second best in the NFL among quarterbacks this past season. Finished the year with 4 fourth-quarter comebacks, which is very impressive as well. And if you look at what Daniel Jones did and what he was working with, I mean, he was working with practice squad wide receivers. Isaiah Hodgins was a practice squad wide receiver on the Buffalo Bills up to week 10. Richie James was the 5th or 6th wide receiver in the depth chart in San Francisco the last couple of years before coming to the Giants as a free agent, signing a 1-year deal last offseason. And then Darius Slayton was the 5th or 6th Giants wide receiver in the depth chart heading into this year with Kenny Golladay ahead of him, Wanda Robinson ahead of him, Kadarius Toney ahead of him, Sterling Shepard ahead of him.
The injuries
even Cohen Johnson ahead of him.
To get on the field, he had to have the injuries happen.
Darius Slayton was the 6th wide receiver on that depth chart heading into this offseason, or last offseason, and heading into training camp. And what did he do? He stayed, prevailed. Obviously, those injuries happened, and he got his moment and ended up becoming a big part of that Giants wide receiving core in big moments. And obviously, Daniel Jones trusted him. But Daniel Jones finished the year with probably the worst wide receiver group in the NFL. And also, this was his 4th play caller in 4 years now. He had Pat Sherm as his head coach, Joe Judge as his head coach, and now Brian Daboll as head coach. So 3 head coaches. And he also had his rookie year, had Pat Shermer calling plays, then ended up having Jason Garrett for a season and a half, then Freddie Kitchens to finish that other half of the season, and then he also had this past year Brian Daboll as the head coach, and then Mike Kafka as the offensive coordinator. So he's dealt with 4 different play callers over his career now, and just his 4th season, now going into his 5th year in the NFL. He was 6th best in quarterback rating this past year, 5th in quarterback rushing yards, had 5 game-winning drives, which is actually 2nd best in the NFL, and finished 1st in interception percentage in the NFL. And that's with a team that only won 4 games the season before. In 2021, the Giants only won 4 games. Obviously, credit to Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll for coming in, helping out Daniel Jones around him. Obviously, good coaching, and obviously having a stable front office is huge, and that's a big part of success. But people talk about Daniel Jones and say that they can't give him as much credit as he deserves because he has good coaching around him. What about Andy Reid? Patrick Mahomes is Andy Reid. That's a great coach.
Yes, it is.
Geno Smith had Pete Carroll. That's a great coach.
Yes, it is.
Tom Brady had Bill Belichick. Another great coach. I mean, coaching is part of the game. You shouldn't discredit a quarterback just because they have good coaching around them. That should be a given. You should have good coaching around you. You should want your quarterback to have good coaching around them.
Look at
what Doug Peterson did for Trevor Lawrence this past year. Trevor Lawrence was awful his rookie year with Urban Meyer as head coach. Then you get stability in a head coach and an offense coordinator that knows what they're doing and has obviously experience being a play caller in Doug Peterson, and it helps.
How about what Doug Peterson did with Nick Foles?
Exactly.
It's in the Super Bowl.
Exactly. That's a big reason.
Nick Foles?
Yeah, absolutely, and got a Super Bowl out of him when Carson Wentz went down. Daniel Jones in his first 3 years in the NFL had a 12-25 record, a 63% completion percentage, had 50 touchdowns and 49 turnovers, 2 fourth-quarter comebacks, and 3 game-winning drives in 3 seasons. Last year, 10-6-1 record. So he was 12-25 in his first 3 years. He was 10-6-1 this past year with a 67% completion percentage, 24 touchdowns to 8 turnovers with 4 fourth-quarter comebacks and 6 game-winning drives overall. Very impressive year for Daniel Jones. That includes the regular season and the postseason. Obviously, winning one postseason game and losing a postseason game, but very impressive season there for Daniel Jones.
Just improving every year, and now that he has a better team around him, better coaching, I think the sky's the limit, and this should be another big year for the Giants, improving on what they started last year.
Definitely. And he finished the regular season, I should say, this past year, as I said, with a 67% completion percentage, 3,200, passing yards, 15 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions, adding in 708 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. So he obviously helps you both on the ground and in the air. And coaching is important, and this comes, obviously an advantage to Daniel Jones having good coaching around him. But when he had Joe Judge as his head coach, he obviously struggled. 25 games during the Joe Judge era, only threw 21 touchdowns at 17 picks during that time with a 63% completion percentage, threw for 5,371 yards in those 25 games, adding in 721 rushing yards with 3 rushing touchdowns, 1 game-winning drive, and an 82.6 rating as a passer. But then in 29 games without Joe Judge, that includes the Pat Shurmur era, and then also the Brian Daboll era, 29 games, 39 passing touchdowns, 17 picks, 64% completion percentage with 6,232 passing yards, adding in 987 yards on the ground for 5.98 yards per carry, with 9 rushing touchdowns, 7 game-winning drives, and a 90.1 rating. So obviously Daniel Jones a lot better with better coaching around him. And credit to Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen for doing great things, obviously as a front office, and then as a head coach as well around Daniel Jones.
Yeah, we can't wait for next year. I mean, we're very excited about the team and the season they had. I mean, a playoff win on the road as a decent-sized underdog.
Beating Minnesota was big, even though Minnesota obviously was
with that crowd.
A team that most saw as overrated. Winning a playoff game against a team that won 12 games of regular season is hard to do.
27 points in that game too. I mean, for an offense that struggled for just like you said, Joe.
31-24, the Giants won that game.
31 points. I mean, very
31.
Impressive.
31-24. The Vikings heading into that game, I believe, were 13-4, and then they lost that game. Obviously, finished the season 13-5. The Giants finished the season, though, 10-7-1. Daniel Jones was very impressive in that game against the Vikings. 24-35, passing for 301 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Saquon Barkley was great as well. 9 carries for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns, adding in 5 catches of 56 yards in the air. So that just shows Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are a lot better when they are together. And hopefully this Giants offense continues to roll and do big things. And obviously bringing back Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley with Mike Kafka being the head coach or offensive coordinator again and Brian Daboll being the head coach. You got to expect the Giants to have even a better year next year, hopefully, with building this offseason and maybe even adding a wide receiver in the draft, which I know you're a big Zay Flowers fan from BC. Hopefully they add a wide receiver with some speed. I think they need some size as well. But Isaiah Hodgins at least is a little bigger, and you also have Colin Johnson coming back this year. But I do think the Giants could add some speed in the draft. Obviously, Wanted Robinson will be coming back as a wide receiver.
What a weapon he
was great.
Out, yeah.
He was great in the limited plays he had. Darius Slayton's a free agent. Richie James is a free agent. So we'll see what happens with those two guys. But the Giants have a little bit of work to do this offseason. But getting Daniel Jones under contract was the main priority this offseason. The Giants did it. And a lot of people are going to be mad about that. And one thing I just want to close with, people are going to be mad about Daniel Jones' contract and say he's getting overpaid. Right now, there are 9 quarterbacks now in the NFL making $40 million per year in average annual value. AAV for short. You'll probably hear that a lot. Daniel Jones now is tied for 7th with Dak Prescott and Matt Stafford, rounding out the top 9 in average annual value, $40 million apiece. So Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, and Matt Stafford on their respective deals. Aaron Rodgers makes $50 million in average annual value. Russell Wilson, $48.5 million. Kyler Murray, $46.1 million. $46 million for Deshaun Watson. $45 million for Patrick Mahomes. And Josh Allen making $43 million, with Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, and Matt Stafford being tied for 7th, making $40 million. So that's 9 quarterbacks making over $40 million in average annual value. That doesn't include Lamar Jackson, who will get paid over the next year. Probably very soon. He got franchise tag today. He wants a new deal. I don't think he's even going to play under the franchise tag. I think he wants a new deal before he steps on the field again. That doesn't include Lamar Jackson. Joe Burrow, who's set for a mega deal. Justin Herbert, who will be paid very well. Jalen Hurts will be paid as well. He wants around $50 million a year. We'll see what he gets. And then it also doesn't include Trevor Lawrence. So that's 5 quarterbacks right there that will be making over $40 million by this time next year for sure. Trevor Lawrence might be a year and a half from now. We'll see. But I'm sure they'll pay him earlier rather than later, since that's what happens. You wait for the market to set, and the market's just going to keep resetting and going up as the salary cap goes up. So you probably want to pay a guy a little bit earlier rather than later, and that's what happened with Patrick Mahomes. He was paid in the 2020 offseason, July of 2020, making $45 million a year. He set the market in 2020, but in 2022, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson all got $46+ million in average annual value. They set the market for this year's free agency class, and that's why you see Daniel Jones making $40 million. That's why Derek Carr's making $37.5 million, and that's why you also saw Geno Smith getting $35 million from the Seattle Seahawks. He's making $25 million in base salary, but he got 3 years, $105 million. So obviously that plays a role. And Daniel Jones saw the market, saw what he was worth, and that's what quarterbacks are worth nowadays. If you want to call Daniel Jones a mid-level quarterback and he's mid and he's not that good, well, at the end of the day, by this time next year, there'll be 5 more quarterbacks making over $40 million. Hurts, Lawrence, Herbert, Burrow, Jackson. 5 more quarterbacks making over $40 million. That means there'll be 14 quarterbacks in the NFL making over $40 million in average annual value. And that doesn't even include someone else who could pop up and make themselves some money the next year. So there'll be 14 quarterbacks making over $40 million in average annual value by this time next year. And that means Daniel Jones will be tied for 12th. Obviously, that means 12th, 13th, and 14th technically, even though they're all tied to 12th, will be Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, and then Matt Stafford all making $40 million. So they'll be 12th to 14th in average annual value making $40 million. So Daniel Jones is a mid-level quarterback to most people, which I don't believe he's that at all. I think he's going to have a really good year. Just need another wide receiver and then some interior offensive line help. I think Daniel Jones is going to prove to be a steal of a deal, considering $40 million by this time next year will be the 14th or 12th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Obviously, with 3 guys making $40 million, 12th, 13th, 14th, all tied for 12th. That'll be Daniel Jones with Matt Stafford and Dak Prescott tied at $40 million a year. But how do you feel about that really quick before we close?
He could be a bargain, within a year or two. Like you said, all these quarterbacks coming up for new contracts. I mean, he's going to be paid like the 15th, 15th quarterback.
In average annual value.
Salary, but, he's a top 10 quarterback in my book. So I think the Giants signed a very good team-friendly deal today with him.
And he's a top 10 quarterback in my eyes as well. And there's no doubt in my mind Daniel Jones deserves the respect and the credit that he hasn't gotten, but he will get at some point. I think the unwarranted disrespect that Daniel Jones has received has been out of proportion. But I'm happy with what he's obviously been doing this past year with the Giants, and I'm happy he's got his payday because he deserves it more than anyone, considering all the criticism he got. And Saquon Barkley got. Both guys were heavily criticized. Their draft picks are heavily criticized over the last 2 or 3 years now. Everyone was drilling those guys, whether it was Twitter, whether it was ESPN, Fox Sports, Colin Cowherd, Ryan Clark, Stephen A. Smith, just name a few, Dominique Foxworth. All of those guys were drilling Daniel Jones every single day in the studio, talking about how horrible a draft pick he was and how he's a turnover machine and how he's an awful quarterback and he doesn't belong as a starter in the NFL and he's overrated and he doesn't deserve to get paid. He's not this and he's not that. Daniel Jones listened to all that, discredited it, and then walked in, obviously, and made himself some money, and he deserves it. I'm happy for DJ. And then this also shows some positive light for Dave Gettleman, a guy that obviously wasn't the best GM, obviously missed on Kenny Galladay and Nate Solder, 2 of the worst contracts in Giants history, but he hit on Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley in my eyes.
He drafted extremely well, and that gets overshadowed by some of his free agent signings, like you said, Galladay and Solder.
Galladay, Solder, and obviously DeAndre Baker didn't work out, Kadarius Toney didn't work out.
Maybe Bradbury coming in didn't live up, but Adoree Jackson looks great.
Adoree Jackson was great. I think Bradbury's issue is the backloading. Bradbury's deal wasn't that bad, except they backloaded, so he would have been making $20+ million this year. Yeah. And then the Giants had to cut him since they needed cap space. So that's a reality. But at the end of the day, the Giants do bring back Daniel Jones. Congratulations to Daniel Jones on a great contract. He deserves it more than anyone, and you're the biggest Daniel Jones fan I know. So credit to you for being right about him 4 years ago today.
And let's not forget his work ethic too. They always say he's the first guy in the building, and he watches film.
Last guy out too.
That's right. So
first guy in, last guy out. And he watches as much film, and credit to you.
I'm sure that won't stop.
Definitely, he's locked in. He wants to win, and same thing with Saquon Barkley. So just to reiterate, 4 years, $160 million for Daniel Jones. He'll be getting $82 million in his first 2 years. And then you have Saquon Barkley getting a 1 year, $10.1 million franchise tag. He can negotiate with the Giants up until July 15th on a long-term deal. Credit to you, the sports encyclopedia, the sports wizard, for knowing that Daniel Jones was the right answer and was obviously a great quarterback. And most people discredited him because of the inconsistent play they had around him, whether it was health-wise, the ineptitude as a front office, or the bad play calling. Daniel Jones did not have any help around him until this past year. And credit to Daniel Jones, to Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka for helping Daniel Jones out. Daniel Jones helped himself out, obviously, by putting in the work. But then you also add in good coaching and then just add in some support around him in the front office. And two guys that believed in him, Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, believed in him enough to give him 4 years, $160 million.
Yeah, I mean, they went from a 4 or 5 win team to a road playoff victory.
Underdogs as well. So it was a huge win.
Huge step.
They'll keep building. But anyways, that will conclude this episode. Thank you so much for coming on, Paul. Always a pleasure. I'll happily have you on again, hopefully, within the next few weeks. Hopefully the Giants will make a move by next Wednesday. I believe next Wednesday will be the start of free agency, March 15th. So
that's right.
Hopefully we'll have you on again around that time when I'm live on air, maybe next Tuesday night. They'll be talking about some deals that could potentially go down. Thank you, Paul, as always. I appreciate it. Hope you have a good night. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Joe. Go Giants.
Anyways, that will conclude the episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. As always, I appreciate it and hope you guys have a good one. Thank you.